For joining us for this part of our meeting. I would like to call to order this meeting. Forgot to check with Brian. Are we all okay? Great, thank you. Noting that all board members are here except Jack, and we expect him shortly. So the first part of the meeting is to do some board development, and we have Nathan here to help us in our branding process. And Annie, I don't know if you want to start us off and then turn it over to Nathan, but I'll turn it to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan, for being here. Nathan is with Foundry, and I think back in May you had approved the beginning of our branding process for our district. So as Randy and I were brainstorming how this looked, we really wanted to start with Nathan to give an overview of what the process will look like in the next year, and then really talk with you to see if you have any questions about the process as we really dig in and start the process of branding our district. So thank you, Nathan. He has a very short presentation for you. I say an outline of what he would like to talk with you tonight, and then we'll leave it up to questions that you may have.
Yeah, there's two things in your packet. You can see, I think it's just the timeline from Foundry, and then the draft of what Annie has called our core committee, which we want to just have some conversations about. I think our kind of our goal for the, as we have about an hour with Nathan tonight, one is to kind of learn more about his process and open that up for your conversation and questions, but then certainly to make sure that we're tight on kind of what our leadership team looks like, how we're going to bring these things back, how we're going to involve the board and the community so that we have a common understanding of that moving forward. Because I think this is a piece that we'd like to kind of use this as a launching to our process, and once we leave here tonight, we want to start to continue to move forward. Nathan, I think that's we can turn it over to you.
Well, thank you for having me again. I appreciate the time, and I'm happy to open up this conversation and happy to answer questions too. First, I'd like to thank you for moving forward with this project and this process and allowing me to help you and guide you in that direction. I'm here today to kind of really talk about my process, about how to move forward with rebranding and redevelopment, and really kind of give you a quick 101 of what will happen and why and where, and kind of just the general basics of this. And so there is some kind of outline time frame that you can see on paper, and so that those expectations are being met. Okay. The main purpose of this is to really help move forward and create a game plan, okay, and where the critical points are, the critical conversations, so that we can do this efficiently and effectively moving forward, to help address and guide what comes out from the goals committee concerns and the comments. Discuss project outline and key components and how and why we are moving this forward. And with that being said, one of the opportunities here is that for you to understand that this is a committee-driven project. This isn't me coming in and explaining or telling you what you should have on your plate or on your wall. What we're going to do is develop a system for focus groups to come in and for a logo team to help guide and to come to a common solution that best represents you as a district. And that's kind of like what I mean by that right away is that there is this process, and this is why it takes a year long. Everybody's schedules are different. There's a lot going on, but what also is the research of it all. And kind of also help educate and guide you on the importance of this, the differences between what a logo is and a mascot, and to find the right solution to some of your needs. And I did hear the last meeting and discussion, and part of this is part of that too. So how do we move forward with that question and that conversation and how do we apply it moving forward. And the ultimate goal in my world for you is what best communicates you, okay? I love red, but you like blue. You know, those are the things that we will try to work out by hearing the voices of how others see, okay? So with that, one of the things I'd like to bring up, and it's kind of like the difference between the logo, mascot, and spirit icon is what I would call it, is think of the University of Madison. You know, everybody knows Madison so well, especially in this area, that there's multiple visual icons that help represent the organization. There is the W crest, that's more the formal presentation of the university that deals with the academics. Then there's the flying W, and then there's Bucky the Badger. You know, Bucky is more of the mascot, you know, pumps everybody up. He's the spirit. The W was used for the crest and basically the uniform. But, you know, that was probably the 80s, maybe 90s when that was released. But that W crest has been around for quite some time, just with a little tweak here and there, but that is the formal, you know, presentation. So that's the system that we're looking to develop for you, is to have that kind of protocol and understanding of how to use them in the right spots and where to use them. I think one of the challenges Randy was discussing one time is that you have multiple icons, multiple logos, and that promotes a lot of confusion, especially to your taxpayer and people who have no idea who the district really is. Let's talk about open enrollment, and you're looking for parents who are coming into the community. If they can't see and recognize you right away, that again promotes that confusion. More confusion, kind of also a lack of trust, a feeling of lack of trust. And what we're trying to do is to iron all that out and realign the district to meet those requirements. So I kind of went off on. One of the things also to develop here is to develop with the base of community, the word community, and one of the main things is to make sure it represents all. Okay, that has been a very strong conversation through a lot of school districts and a lot of schools, is that because you have a diverse crowd and mindsets are changing and values have changed, and what we need to do is help realign some of those to meet that criteria. A lot of older, logos and mascots are usually developed around athletics, and not everything is around athletics, especially nowadays in today's environment. There's also music, the arts, clubs, a huge diversity of people who want to feel included into that community. The other thing is also to show that value, that you're recognizing that situation as well. So during this process, what I'm going to do is go through this timeline in a second and talk about the district, the differences between district identity and school identity as well. Part of this is, with the focus group, is to understand what the issue could be or will be, and then how to respond to that. And everybody in here around this table can look at something and have a different opinion, a different mindset based on their own background. And what we're trying to do is hear how others see you, and that we can then develop something that matches along with what is currently being done, and for both current and for future, and to make this more timeless. And with this being timeless, that means this district will outlast us, and that we don't want to keep redoing this all the time, every 2 years, and reinvent ourselves. What we want to do is to make sure that there is a foundation, that your current foundation is being represented correctly, okay? And with that being said too, is to understand the school. If, you know, do schools have individual identities? Is it just a district identity? Because multiple districts see it differently. People respond differently. Like if you were to put a logo on a letterhead, they will understand it's from the district first, but there's multiple Jefferson Elementaries out there in the world, or XYZ high school out there, that it will be not confusing, but the power of the district is much more solid and excuse me, and has more foundation to help with your message and moving your message forward. All right, so with that being all said, it was just a quick 101 of, and I know I threw a lot out there and it seems a little confusing, but I wanted to explain these factors because this is how the timeline is developed. And one of the reasons, and if you look on the actual kind of the cell document, that just shows you what are the main stages and then the main time frames of when it's going to be completed, with the mindset of it being completed in June. And one of the main reasons why this is happening is one, you actually have the luxury of time on your side. You're not having a building being erected and you needed it on the side of the building, or gym floor being done. But the other thing is when you create a new brand and develop a new brand, you don't want it to launch it in the middle of a school year. That will interrupt the current communications, and that could really confuse. The other thing I also suggest is, depending on where needs and referendums, just be careful. That kind of, like, if you foresee an operational referendum, you want to make sure your visual identity is consistent throughout, so the messaging stays the same. And then what we do is, or I do, is backtrack how long it will take. So the launch will probably be July, August at the very latest, and then we work backwards, and with the district being the first focus. Okay. And with that being said, how do you start this process? Well, we engage stakeholders for you. What we'll do is bring in focus groups, and I'll tell you the difference between the focus group and the core, I would call it the core logo team, and the needs for both of these groups and teams, and how it will go to the next steps. We'll bring in focus groups to fully understand how people are seeing the district. What are they saying? What's the chatter? What's the gossip? How do they view you? Where's the values that they see? What are the challenges? And it will open up some conversation, and you'll hear negative and positive, but that's great, because you want to hear all aspects, all views. And then what we'll do is we'll take that information and then we'll apply it to the research on how to move forward with the logo. And this is basically really how all ad agencies and marketing firms develop a logo with a company. We know that logos can be very subjective, and that what we're trying to do is build the backstory behind it and help complement what best communicates the district. With the focus groups, we discussed, Annie and Randy and I had discussed that we're looking into a parent focus group, a community business stakeholder, staff and administration, Board of Education, and then like a student focus as well. But the student focus would be high school only. Reasons being, from my experiences, that with high school students especially, their vision of a district is the school that they're at. They don't see it as a big picture. They don't recognize it as the big picture. Some will, but the majority are more right there, kind of more in the front lines of the school. So we would want to hear their feedback specifically for the high school. Logo, then there's the logo team, the logo core team. And well, let me back up one more. The focus groups are going to be a larger community, a larger reach out for people. Depending on how far you want to go or we go with it, and perfect example is one community I worked with sent out an invite to the whole community, and it was about 3,000 residents. But this is, I believe, around 20,000 plus residents here. That doesn't seem like it is fully needed, but what we can do is specifically look for and talk to people who will give us the best and the most honest feedback that can help us move forward. I did work with the Racine Unified School District, and that's the 4th largest district in the state, and we specifically went with the categories of parent, staff, community, and it was almost crickets on response. But there were some people that really did engage. So I can see a middle ground here with your district based on some of the conversations I've had and feedback that I heard. With those focus groups, which are, we'll walk them through a process. It's a brainstorming process. I have loaded questions that will help me understand how they will see things, and then I filter them through my work process and research to help develop something. That brainstorm meeting will also be applied to the logo core team. Okay, now the logo core team is select individuals, no more than 7 or 8. Usually I like to stay to the odd, 7 to 9 people, and they represent a parent, an administrator, staff, again, maybe a student for high school only, community member, business partners, and that they will work with us to develop the logo moving forward. And that, what will happen is I will walk them through that same brainstorming meeting, so it would be an apple-to-apple comparison. And then what will happen is that there's going to be underlining themes, there's going to be a lot of different messaging, and I'm just going to have to work it out. This is all applied to the development, and then after that first round brainstorm, then I present the logos. I usually present about up to 5, depending on the feedback and the need to have this the next conversation. But I will probably develop hundreds before I even get to those 5. Then what will happen is that round 2, that core team, that logo core team will come back together, and I'll present that to them, and then they will respond. So it's like a responding call. So they will respond to the logos. One day I can hit it out of the park, but another one is good. They don't like it, doesn't represent them. But what we'll end up doing is we'll end up honing into on the actual visual image that the core team feels is appropriate, that best communicates the district. Excuse me.
Can I interrupt you
Yeah.
for just a second,
Mhm.
Nathan? One of the things that Annie put together was kind of just a draft of the core team, and you just did a nice job explaining what that is. What Annie and I did was we just brainstormed kind of like membership, etc. I think walking away tonight, that's something we would like to kind of establish with you. We're open to complete feedback. I mean, some of the people on here we've spoken to, others were names that came up as they've shown an interest or have some background in that type of work. One of the things that Nathan shared with Annie and I early on, or during our conversation today, was that the value of having both Annie and I there, but also making sure we don't dominate that conversation, so that's a piece that we can kind of carry through in the other meetings that we're doing. But we would like to kind of hear from the board before we're done here tonight, kind of your feedback on kind of membership or how to go about selecting, and if there's people you'd recommend we talk with. I mean, Brian's name is on here from the board. I mean, that's obviously something the board gets to appoint or can appoint, but he had just stepped forward early on saying that he had background in this from his previous work at the college and was interested in that type of work. So we kind of just pre-populated it from a perspective of people that we knew or thoughts that we had. But that's a piece that we'd like your feedback on, because this is a core piece we have to get moving with as we leave here tonight.
Yeah, that's correct. Once those teams are selected, then we can go off and develop the plan for the focus group if that core team wants to join the focus group, so they hear firsthand what people are saying. That's a lot of time and commitment, so we want to make sure we and appreciate everybody's time and value their time for this. But it's also with this type of feedback, it's always good to get almost a knee-jerk instant reaction instead of like sitting on it and developing it, because people do influence each other. Okay, no matter what they're saying, it's like when I present the logo, there's going to be somebody who's going to have a more dominant conversation vocally, and a lot of people will say, yeah, I like it, looks good. But if you put a piece of paper in front of them and a pen, they will tell you the honest truth, and it's a whole nother story. So those are the practices I'm going to put towards this meeting, to really hear the true voice of what is going on. And I don't think there is a major problem here, and if I'm hoping that I'm not coming off that way. It's just how the process is done, because everybody should have some kind of voice in how do you represent it in a logo. I mean, it's one of the craziest things. It looks so simple to make, but it's one of the hardest things to develop. And and I can go back to Manpower. There's a logo. Manpower took over a year to create. It took the designer 10 minutes to make. It's just, that's how important the backstory is for you to hear and align all of that. With that logo team helping us out, what will happen is, again, we'll get down to the point where we can present a formal presentation that the logo team can actually back and say, we all agree with this one, we would like to move forward with this, and then and with the blessings. I can't say if you make the final decisions, because every district does it differently, and so it's how you guys will operate and how you want to move forward with it. That's just so you're aware. I'm happy to make those accommodations and adjustments.
Does it make sense to have an alumni or a couple that are within the last few years, not too far out, but not too, that had time to reflect on?
Yeah.
Sure.
I was thinking far out too. I mean, they're in the
Right.
community, they've been a long-term member, and I'm sure they'd be
That's
a
what
great.
I'd like.
With the
Yeah.
with the core team. That's
Like somebody in the stats or
Yeah.
the Mefford.
we have a
They're very supportive of school activities and school here, community, business here.
I would assume that there are some parameters here that we're starting with, not
Yes.
starting with a blank piece of paper, You mentioned red and other colors. I would assume that we're going to stay with purple, not so we get off on left field. Have we put parameters on this, or?
What will happen is with the brainstorming session is you allow people to express. so purple has a huge representation, like color theory, there's like, it's royal, okay? Like that, like people think that's like, it's a higher standard, just in the base of the color. And the thing is a lot of this is ingrained into us, like even like when you read something, how like easy it is to read with like what's called Times New Roman. It's because every book and all the copy is built with like what's called a serif font. But if I put it into a sans serif font, there's power. So what we need to do is hear the response from our teams to fully understand. A lot of the times, color isn't adjusted. The only time I've done enough district logos that I've only changed one district color, and that was Racine Unified. They were red and black, and one of them was a gang color, and then they couldn't use anymore because there was too much affiliation. And then with their old logo, it looked real violent, and they wanted to get completely away from that feeling. So then we decided to come in with a new color scheme to help represent. It was because if you think of Racine County, it goes from the lake.
Yeah,
and all
but I think, you know, is it something that we want to at least say we want to stay with a few things?
Well, there's also a lot of different numbers to purple.
Right.
Purple is not, they'll come down with the exact color purple, and that will be the
But it's the
consistent purple that we always
sage
use.
or color purple hue or something.
Well, I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
To talk about it. This is just,
So what Nathan shared with Annie and I, which is, and I think in his packet when he kind of put forth his initial portfolio, the end game is actually like a series. We'll get a packet at the end that's going to say, here's what you've approved, here's the color, here, as you're doing letterhead, here's where it goes, as you're doing things for the website, here's how.
Yeah.
So we have actually those pieces, and then whether we're working with a printer to put it on a backdrop or we're working with someone else, we have those pieces. But those are the pieces that will identify specifically what color purple it is. And that was the process when we went through and redid the gym this last year, was trying to determine which color purple was it that, and looked at the ones that most represented where we were to, were most prevalently represented. So color is going to be a big piece. I mean, it would shock me if we move away from purple, but I don't see that happening. But I think a definition of what that is, so we have the same purple, is important.
To go on real quick on Randy's point, is that not only is this giving you a visual identity, it's going to give you a backbone and a structure for you to move forward. And that's based on the comment I said earlier, is that the district will outlast us, so that when things start to do change, that can stay consistent while other things and other people come in and out. Board members change, administration changes, kids change, and even time and changes. But at least this can stay as a strong foundation and a strong visual. Do you have a question?
So I was working at the athletic department at AEW when they went through their own logo and marketing change. And one of the things that they did limit the colors of red that could be used.
Yeah.
They limited the accent colors that can be used.
Yeah.
So that it's more recognizable. This is Badger red, not Nebraska red. It's
Yeah.
kind of Texas red.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming if there is flexibility to what, and this would be more sports teams,
Yeah.
the flexibility would be recommended by the committee as to what can go with that red or what can't, or that recognizable thing when we start
Yeah.
doing, ordering uniforms and things.
That's
like that.
correct. So what Randy was going on is that there will be a brand guideline to help move you forward, and there will be a specific page that will tell you what color to look. So that vendor will take that color swatch that they have and look, and then they'll compare it to what, like a dye lot or fabric, or that they can get as closely as possible. You can come in here in this building and you have like 5 different printers, and you use that purple on that and print it out on all 5 different printers. They're all going to be different. what basically this helps, does, is to keep it as consistently as possible. So when you see it on the website and you see it like on a banner, and you see it that they're so close that untrained eye can say it's consistent. Nebraska and Wisconsin have a huge budget, and they're going to make sure that it stays those reds. Target has its own red, and no one knows that formula except for Target, unless you work for Target. I worked for Pfizer at an ad agency. This brand booklet was probably about 200 and some pages because they have 10 other agencies working on it, and we all have our opinions and subjectives, is that I had to make sure that Pfizer was represented the way they wanted to be represented. The font, the style of the picture, the voice of the word, that's all within branding. This is mostly the visual branding side of it, but what will happen is other things come in order to that point, okay? Yeah.
One of the things I just went, well, we've kind of bounced around a little bit
Yeah.
talking about the membership of the core team. Can we come back to that for
Yeah.
a few minutes? I mean, I think some of the things, obviously, like Annie and myself, a member of the board, we'd like a member of, particularly like our high school administration team, because I think that relays into a lot of what you're talking about when we get into our activities type representation. Members of the staff, we're looking at someone from high school and then also someone from another level of staff, so from the K-8 level, a parent or multiple parents, community business leaders. You've tossed out some ideas as far as some of our families in town that have been very supportive of our school over time and over the years. I think that's a great suggestion. I guess I'd like to hear from other members of the board. Are you comfortable with generally how we're organizing this? Do you have suggestions of something else that you'd like to see? We're very open to that.
Go ahead, Mark.
I think I heard that they would be involved, but if this is our primary focus group, I'm a little concerned about our co-curricular representation.
Yep.
Whether that's music or athletics, it seems a little bit light on that. That's probably where we see the greatest output in terms of logos and uniforms and that sort of
Yep.
thing, spirit packets. And so as long as that voice is going to be heard somewhere in the
Yeah.
process, I don't know that it necessarily needs a lot more on the committee, maybe
Yeah.
just one. But that part of the community needs to be heard.
I agree 100. I agree with 100%. One of the things to think about too is that because of the size of the district and because of how you're growing, this could end up into two conversations when it comes to development. One being the district development and then one being the high school development. Depending on the feedback of the focus groups on that they see the district and the high school as almost identical, that could be a good solution just to have that one conversation. I have a district who does not see it that way. The district is almost it's almost invisible compared to the high school. The high school is much more stronger in identity. And so, but the thing is the district is the formal legal situation of that. So that's something that's that structure I was telling you, what we'll develop. So yes, all representation. The other thing is that there is a pattern to your district and who's coming in. Is this a young district? Is this an older district? I currently work with West Allis, West Milwaukee. That's a blue collar district they called it transient. Like they were there only for elementary and everybody left to go to the different high schools, either to Marquette, DSHA, or surrounding like New Berlin. So that what they were trying to do is keep them more, the older students in the district. So those are the things I will hear based on these conversations in these focus groups of like how the perception is, and then how we can respond to that. Okay? Go ahead.
Just back to Randy's makeup here. When you listed the 3 high school people, would you be selecting one of the 3?
I think that's kind of up for discussion. I mean, our thought was we'd probably have one person there. Trying to manage the size of the group was an important piece. Those were 3 that have come to mind that we've had some level of discussion on.
I don't think anything's set in stone, and
No.
what we can do is, the 3 of us can collaborate. You guys are the experts of your own 4 walls, and then you can come, one of the parameters I would like to be is that someone who can give me the honest, like, voice with the mindset of moving forward. Because, you know, in brainstorming, no is not an answer. No, like, everybody has an opinion, everybody has a value to it. And if I show my wife something, she's going to say it differently than I will. You know, so I need to hear all sides of this table to get a true, honest answer. But if there's resistance, there's going to be pushback, then it becomes harder. And that's one of the reasons why we keep the group to about 7-ish, so that can. I know it's hard to, like, I want 30 people, but that's what the big focus groups are doing. They're the blanket statements. They're the ones that are going to give you a little more of the flavor, you know, some of the overall 30,000 view, and then the core team will give the specifics, the hands-on stuff, and that they are really representing the parent side of things. You know, we've discussed in that conversation that I'm not looking at the person, I'm like, what is their experience as a parent? You know, they have multiple kids? Do they have one kid, child? Or are they empty nesters now, you know, and applying it towards that, so.
Jim, who sets the brainstorming from the focus groups into what the core team will actually look at?
Basically, it's me taking all the information and then synthesizing it down to how my work and my work processes. So let's just say, I'm going to give a perfect example. If there's an underlying theme of everybody saying that this is a strong district, I'm going to ask even like what shapes look like. Which one is strong to you? What shape is strong to you? Which one is caring to you? Like, I'll ask those questions. And
In the brainstorming.
In the brainstorming meetings. And then what I do is like literally kind of shuffle it all together, get it all to work in, and it's kind of like my madness, you know. It's like up on the wall, and I'm starting to connect all the dots, and then I see and I come up with the backstory, with also taking into account your mission, vision, your elevator speech, how you talk about the school district. You know, when you're out in the public, how do you say, you know, Waunakee Community School District? You say Waunakee, you say that's just the school district. Those are the things I'm going to like research and develop. Then you got schools who are surrounding you, you know, that are, you know, people are open enrollment, they're going there because of this, or, you know, the parochial schools, taking all that into account as well and how they're communicating and developing and applying that as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
One of the things I guess I would see is probably, just kind of knowing how we want to kind of organize this, we're probably at the higher end of the 7 to 9, probably towards the 9 end,
Yeah.
in order to kind of encompass those number of people. I think what you've also envisioned is that core group would then go to listen to these focus groups, so that information was not only something that was gathered by Nathan, but would be gathered by the core team as then concepts are brought back and vetted out.
Yeah.
So are there any other feedback pieces? I think what Annie and I would do then after we get feedback from the board is we'll kind of put together what we see as what this core team is. And it's a piece I could run past you, Joan, as kind of representing the board if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And then
I really would like to throw one more name out
Yep.
there just because of his input with the goals committee this last week is Tim Decora. I think he's a key person. He's got that coaching. He's got a lot of stake in the community and in the district.
So what's the next step, Randy? You're gonna verify that these people will be on, you bring it
We-
back to us next month.
Yeah, what we'd like to do is try to get this group moving as soon as we're able to, so that we can then start to plan out some of these other focus groups. So we'd like to have some, I guess, consensus around the table of the direction we're going with the core committee, so that we can establish it, put it together. Not sure between now and the next board meeting if we'll have time to pull that group together, but that would be able to kind of start to cement that. That's the first piece that we need. The second piece, I think, from a feedback piece, is to think about our focus groups. We would like to do another meeting with the board that walks through the exact process that Nathan was talking about, administration and staff. So that's more of a staff piece, parents, community, and then students. I mean, those were kind of what we brainstormed today as 5 different groups we felt feedback was important from. And I guess we wanted to open that up to the board to make sure as we start to lay these out, that these are in line with your thoughts. If you have different thoughts, we'd like to hear that.
Yeah, I guess from the community, I'd like to see more of a wider net thrown out there and not use the same families and the same people that we always go to.
Okay.
You know, they have knowledge, yes, but we're more than just we need to expand a little bit more. There are people who have worked for 20 years that have experience in this and have a good say. We don't have to and go back and use the same people all over again.
I would second that. I think you get some historical people that have been around and some new people that may have moved in the last five years or so. You know, because then you get more of a cross-section.
Okay.
I would agree with you as well. I've had good experience that way. Like you were saying, it's the cross-section, you get more variety, but also to bring into the fact that a lot of your current communication is being directed towards parents mostly about the information, or if you're reaching out, the other 80% of your taxpayers who don't have any affiliation with your school district isn't hearing anything, period. And so you need to start hearing that voice, especially when it comes to referendum times, and to start developing that relationship with that 80% to understand what they're looking for and to make sure that they're valued. Because school districts bring so much value to the community. If you have a successful, trusted school district, the community will grow, period. 80% of the people make decisions on a house, even if they don't have a kid in there, is with the school district, because they know it's a demand and it's a value. And that's something that we're, helping to like really develop as well. So yes, I agree with you.
Would the booster clubs be included in the parents, or should that be a separate focus group?
We had initially had booster co-curricular activities as a separate one, so as a separate focus group, so maybe kind of along this process we add that.
Sure.
I mean, dependent on, who attends, will be some of our first ones.
So I would say like booster PTOs would be school specific. District could be done towards a general, they can announce who they are at like a focus, like, hey, I'm the PTO president, here we go. It's based on how many people respond to. I mean, let's be honest, you're gonna send out 20,000 postcards and you're probably gonna get a 5% response, not even. That's just how direct marketing.
So one of the things that we talked about was when we think of the logo, everybody has an idea of what they're thinking of. And what we're really envisioning here from the onset was really 2 different representations. One that represents the school district as a whole, the educational institution, and the other one that represents what I think many people think of as our logo, which is with regards to either athletics, co-curriculars, or those type of things. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a point in time when you talk high school, you're really talking about those co-curricular activities, I believe,
Yeah.
and some of those activities. And that's where there may be some other options for further focus groups, from what I'm
Yes.
understanding.
That, what happens is with the major conversations with the larger groups, it could identify the fact that there is a confusion of identity based on, is this a district or is this a school? Okay, and I personally currently see that from an outsider standpoint, because if you go to your website, it's the same thing over and over and over. But if you go to a district that's just 20 miles away, they already have different identities for schools. So one of the things is like, with that conversation comes up, that could be exposed, and then what will happen is, some of this is going to be a little fluid. Nothing is based on structure because I don't know anything. I'm a rookie and you guys are the experts. Once I start hearing it, then I'm going to say, okay, I just heard a huge problem here that everybody does not see you as a high school, it just sees you as a district. So you need to split a little bit, but still have what's called the umbrella effect, which is basically you got your school district and all your schools sit underneath with an identity, and that can help separate some of that communication. So if there's something specifically needed for the high school, you can use the high school logo specifically for that and be more pointed and directed in your messaging, and it'll become much less confusing.
Would the board like, before we start pulling a core team together, does the board want to see how we envision each of these positions and who we would recommend for them? Do you want that coming back to a future meeting so that you can have a say and approve that? Or do you want that to be something that you delegate off to Annie and I based on the feedback you're giving us tonight? I think
I would
given
just say bring it back in next board meeting, with the people that you've selected. I think we've heard about the criteria. You want somebody with, some good name power for support, and some old historical, new people.
And I think that's realistic, because we have, the board meeting in September is relatively early. Between now and that point in time, we're getting school started. So as far as the realistic about being able to pull some of this together, that makes sense. Mark, did you have your hand up?
And on your scheduling standpoint, you guys are right on schedule for a successful brainstorming scenario, because right now you're in the summer, people are, I just got back from vacation. People are on vacation, they're not in the mindset. The other thing is when you're in school, it's a little bit more focused. Get through your opening, and then we get down to business, and then we can move it throughout the year. One thing to be aware is that this is an important factor of communication, is having visual representation, a strong, consistent. COVID has been nothing but a pain in the back, and it could veer a little bit just because of priorities. So that just be fluid that way too.
I guess the other thing I would do is I'd build out this schedule, let's throw some dates on there when we're planning on doing these brainstorming and things like that, make it a little more detailed.
Yeah, it is real general. And again, once we get the focus group anchored in and on the dates, then we can then take it to the next step of when the first concept can, because it's going to take me a couple weeks. It's a lot to filter through, and it's just not good. It's not a wave of a magic wand, but it will take several weeks to make sure that I don't create something that's sitting in your backyard.
I understand. All I want to do is build this out and get a roadmap on where we're going from today to the end.
Okay.
I think we should select a date for our focus group for the board members. Do you think that should happen before or after the formation of our core committee?
I would say if we can do it in tandem, the core committee is going to be focusing on moving the logo forward. If we could have this meeting next week if you want. I mean, I'll need a little more prep time than that, but to have it with the board. So because what I'm going to do is walk you through the process of this brainstorming, and your answers to me will be what I'm hearing from that focus group. When I go to the parent group, focus group, I'm going to have pretty much the exact same brainstorm and hear their answers. And then that core meeting. So I'm going to probably do this, from what it sounds, could be up to 7 to 8 times.
Right.
And then each one is then you know, like.
So it's going to take you several weeks to put this
Yeah.
program together, then don't we just do the September meeting at 5:30 and then you come with your program?
Yeah, I can come.
That gives you 4 weeks to put it together.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you time to talk to people and get people on board for the committee.
Mhm.
So,
So if we look at, Nathan, we just do, would an hour work for you to do this focus group with the board?
Usually it takes about an hour, hour and a half,
Okay.
is probably what is common with, I would say with this size district and with this amount of information coming in. The
Okay.
first one's always the longest, the second and third one.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking if we could do that, as Jack said, at kind of the 5:30 meeting at the next board meeting, it'll give us probably around an hour. We probably, depending on what, I don't think I'll have much else for closed session, hopefully. We could have an hour and 15 minutes
Yeah.
max. But
With-
then we could do this group, and then at that meeting in September, we could formally approve our core team and then move forward.
Perfect, yeah. With this size group, I would say the hour 15 would be sufficient.
All right, sounds good.
we got some pretty talkative people.
Yeah.
You're limited to 5 minutes. 5.
2 minutes, go.
Judy's gonna get her watch out.
They're trying to cut it down
Cut you
to
down
3.
already.
Well, you know, and the process is great because I could say something and it will spark you and it'll spark you and it'll spark you and then.
Excellent.
You know, so.
Great.
And since there's no
Thanks,
one
Nate.
answer,
Yeah.
I'll say.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Great.
You'll fit right in.
So I can speak? Is what you're saying?
Thanks,
Okay,
Nathan, appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Have a good-
Thanks for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I do look forward to this. It's gonna be an exciting adventure, and to be honest, it's always good to see and hear, and then see the end result. I kind of compare it to Christmas as a kid. So when the day comes, you're gonna reveal it, and everybody's gonna be excited. So,
Great, thanks, Nathan.
all right. Have a great evening.
All right,
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Steve, can you go see if Brian is ready?
Thank you, sir.
There he is.
Is he out there? All right, awesome.
You're official again, Steve.